Hello, people. Welcome to the community of the Growth Mindset podcast. Guys, if you are a first time listener, don't forget to subscribe on whichever platform you're listening from so that you don't miss on more interesting episodes coming up in following weeks. And for our daily listeners, here we are again with a new episode where we will interview another interesting personality from a unique industry and understand how they were able to accomplish this great level of success. Remember, this is a podcast where we learn easy, practical methods and tips that we can implement in our daily lives from the very best and the most successful people known today. Because as we all know, success leaves clues. And we, the people having the growth mindset, will use these clues to create a better, more fulfilling, and a successful life. So, let the growth begin. First thing first, Shade, thank you so much for your time on the Growth Mindset podcast. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, it's such an honor to be here. Thanks for the opportunity to join the show.
Great. So Shade, would you like to go ahead, and quickly tell us a little about yourself, what your expertise is for people who do not know you at the moment?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've spent many years as a corporate strategist, a career development expert for women, and a change consultant with my company Influencio Group, where we help organizations essentially manage disruption. So it's, we know we're living in a very disruptive time right now. So it's fantastic to be able to provide that support for employees and leaders to help them go through this time. My expertise is essentially blending the world of psychology with business, using insights from psychology and neuroscience to how people live more fulfilling lives, both personally and professionally. And obviously that includes navigating change, that includes being the best that you can be, and it even covers happiness and how to lead a happier life.
Interesting. Now, would you like to share a little light about your background? I believe you guys, your family entirely escaped persecution in Middle East, right? At the cusp of the Iranian Revolution. Would you like to share that light as to what exactly happened? What exactly is the story behind it?
Yeah, of course. So my family, both from my mother and my father's side, they embraced a new movement in the mid-1800s, which was called the Baha'i Faith. Now, the Baha'i Faith is founded by Baha'u'llah, and this movement was revolutionary at the time in the sense that Baha'u'llah's teachings were all about the oneness of humanity, the oneness of religion, the elimination of prejudice, and of course, the equality of men and women. Now, this was at a time where no women on the planet could vote, and women in that country were actually second-class citizens. So these were very, very revolutionary thoughts and ideas. Today, actually, the Baha'i Faith is the second most widespread religion around the world. And there's actually quite a vibrant community in India, actually. You have one of the most beautiful temples in New Delhi, the Lotus Temple, which I would love to visit one day. So I'm hoping to be able to come along. Yeah. But like all religions, when they first start, those who follow them, they were faced with severe persecution. And every day, even today, Baha'is in Iran still face persecution and are denied their rights as citizens. So my grandparents took a huge risk in escaping when they did, but they successfully were able to come out of that country. And I'm so aware that if it wasn't for their bravery, I would have been living in a country where I would have no rights as a Baha'i, but also I'd have very, very few rights as a woman.
Yeah. All right. And how many people did you guys escape with? Was it just your family or did you have relatives as well?
It was our family. So it was mainly our family. They escaped. Other families also escaped themselves. So there was a very, very long period of time, many decades, where they were leaving. And things became especially bad around about the time of the revolution, where it became extremely extreme, so to speak. Okay. So we are very, very fortunate that they were able to come out when they did.
All right. And where did you guys move to? Australia was the first place, or did you go to US or somewhere else?
No, it was actually the UK. So it was England.
Okay.
So went to England. My parents then came to Australia in the 80s. They had my brother here, and then I was also born in the 80s as well. And then slowly each member of the family came over to Australia. So I think they put in a good word. They loved the weather. There were lots of opportunities here. And now pretty much the entire extended family is living within Australia, which is lovely.
Awesome. And it's pretty interesting to see that, you guys have made your roots in Australia now because, migrants, people coming out, immigrants, let's say coming out from a different country and then trying to settle in a new country, that's a whole new ball game, right? So you got to deal with the culture, the entire different perspective of people. How did you guys manage it? I think some way, one or the other way, that has added an advantage to your life personally, because that has made you a better person to who you are today. I'm sure there are a lot of challenges that you guys faced, right? Do you remember any specific challenge that you guys faced when you migrated? What are some of the challenges that you faced, and what really shaped you to who you are today?
Yeah, it's a great question. I wish I could remember, but I wasn't
Hmm.
actually born yet. So I was born in the 80s and my family was already here. But I have
Hmm.
heard some stories. And I think, like any family that leaves, or any person who leaves their roots, leaves their home, there's a huge amount of cultural adjustment that they need to go through. You leave a part of yourself. I think when you're escaping a country, if you're a religious refugee or a humanitarian refugee or an asylum seeker, you're leaving so much of who you are back home, but you're leaving because you know you have to leave for a better life for yourself and your family. So I think it takes a huge amount of strength to leave, and a huge amount of hope to maintain that things will be okay. And it will be tough, and you will be in new environments. You'll have to interact with new people, come across an entirely new system, and really establish yourself from scratch.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
it's incredible to see the successes and the achievements that people who have been through that have been able to do in their lives, and inspire others along the way. I find their stories hugely, hugely inspiring. So I
How,
wish I had my own personal memories of that, but
how
it's
was your
family
childhood?
memories.
How was your childhood like with your parents when you moved to
My
Australia?
childhood was beautiful. It
Yeah.
was a very, very happy childhood. I had, I'm so fortunate to come from such a beautiful, loving family with parents that adored us and encouraged us to be whatever we wanted to. And I think now that I'm an adult and I look back, I'm also really pleased and grateful that we were raised with very, very strong spiritual beliefs
Mm-hmm.
around, I touched on them, the people not having any prejudice, really working towards harmony, as opposed to conflict,
Yeah.
and especially, again, equality of men and women. There's so many of these ideals that we were raised with as kids, so we just always thought that was the way the world was. And then as we got older and we encountered people in our lives who didn't believe in those things, it was such a weird process to go through, and a very strange adjustment that we had to come face to face with.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I also speak for my brother. We're very much passionate about social justice, around doing what we can to help and to serve communities and bring about a collective consciousness that at the end of the day, we're all one. We're all
100%.
connected, and we need to do what we can to actually support each other.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, Shadi, you are well known in the women industry, right? Women coaching industry. Now, when did you get into this field? What exactly inspired you? Why did you specifically choose this field?
Very good question. I would say, look, part of it comes from the fact that I am so aware that had my grandparents not escaped that country when they did, I wouldn't be here. And I would be living essentially a life of oppression. I wouldn't have a voice to be able to share my opinions or be valued. So I feel like I almost have a responsibility to give back, to help women recognize the talents and the innate strengths that they have, so that they can then contribute, be meaningful contributors to their personal and professional lives. Now, we also know from a lot of research that women cross-culturally have lower confidence, lower self-esteem, are more likely to hold themselves back from opportunities. So from my work as a corporate strategist, working with companies, and my work with women where I'm coaching and consulting, I've seen this firsthand, and I've seen how women do hold themselves back. And I really believe that if women can overcome this limiting belief that they have in their heads around the fact that they don't feel ready, or they don't feel like they have all the skills that they need, and instead just back themselves and go forward, we as a society will actually benefit from
Yeah.
having women more actively participating in meaningful employment and doing, more for the community, because they're valued.
Yeah.
So that was not really answering the question, but for me, it's very much been something I've been passionate about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I've received so much positive feedback. So even before I was in this space, I received so much positive feedback, and so many women, especially women within organizations in the corporate world, who would seek me out for guidance, for support, for advice. And I would then receive so much positive feedback about what I was sharing with them. And some of them shared that it had completely transformed how they viewed things. They had a perspective shift. They were seeing these wonderful outcomes in their lives. And I thought, gosh, maybe there's something here. Maybe I really should invest in supporting women on a more formal level.
Yeah.
So it's sort of been an evolution over time. It wasn't like I woke up one morning and thought, I know exactly what I need to do.
Cool. All right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, this is very important what you've just mentioned. There are 2 points that I basically was reflecting upon. Now, you said about limiting beliefs, right? Now, limiting beliefs are normally caused or conditioned into your brain when you are normally a kid, right? That's basically how it turns out. Now, what can women do to make sure that these limiting patterns or these limiting beliefs that they have, they could break this? You would have done it obviously to a lot of different women out there. So what are some advice that you could give to
Yeah,
listeners?
absolutely. It's such an important point, because you're right. First 7 years of our lives is when, as a child, you are just absorbing everything. And so a lot of the limits that people have actually originate back to as early as up to the age of 7, which means these limiting beliefs have been repeated and reinforced constantly. And that's why people find them so deep-seated, and that's why they can be so enduring and persistent. But that doesn't mean that you can't change them, because the brain has this wonderful facet which makes it neuroplastic. So the brain can actually learn new stuff, and we can form new neural pathways. And all you do, so this is how I describe it to people. I say, if you're trying to learn a new dance routine, what do you need to do? Well, you practice it, and then you practice it some more, and you practice it again, and it becomes muscle memory. That's how people refer to it.
Yep.
Essentially what's happening is you're developing these default pathways in your brain, creating a pattern, which then becomes something that you don't even have to think about. So in exactly the same way, when it comes to our thoughts and our limiting beliefs and what we're telling ourselves, we can apply the same principle, and it just comes through repetition. So what I always encourage people to do, men and women alike, is first you need to be aware of what kind of limiting thoughts and limiting beliefs that you have, which is often the biggest challenge, because a lot of people don't even realize that they are holding themselves back. So awareness is definitely key, and this may involve asking for guidance, asking other people to share their thoughts with you on what perhaps your limiting thoughts or beliefs are. Then actively changing the narrative in your head. So that simply means when you notice a self-limiting thought start to arise, perhaps, I'm not good enough, I'm not ready, that person is better than me. A lot of the time we see on social media, social comparison. I don't have a house like that person has. I don't have a beautiful family like they do. And we're constantly applying these limits to ourselves, which makes us feel terrible and miserable. So when you notice that happening, consciously redirect that thought towards something positive, towards something self-affirming. Shift your mindset away from what you lack into a mindset of abundance. What do you have to be grateful for? And when you do this enough times, essentially you're taking this neural pathway which used to go to a limiting belief, and you are redirecting it, and slowly over time you create a new pathway which then becomes your default. So essentially it's becoming aware of what your thoughts are, consciously redirecting them to something positive, a growth mindset approach. And then over time this becomes a default way of thinking.
Perfect. And what are some factors that basically influence these limiting beliefs, right? Let's say when we are a kid, what are some, for example, parents, right? What your parents are teaching, what they think, that's one of the ways on how you get these limiting beliefs, right? One is the society where you're currently staying. That's where you get those beliefs. Do you know any other places from where all these beliefs are, ingrained into a person? What are the factors?
Absolutely. So you definitely mentioned family is a huge one. And it doesn't even have to be what parents directly say to their children. It can actually be what children observe.
Interesting.
Because they're like sponges. So they may see your mother say something to your father, or your father say something to your mother, and it's not directed at you, but they see that, they internalize that, and then they start to develop beliefs around their capacity and their ability as a result of that. So there's obviously parents. Culture is a huge one. So again, we live within a certain culture. And that's not only, cultural culture, but a societal culture. Lots of different factors that influence it. Another one is the media, what you see about your role and what you can or cannot do based on who you identify with in movies or on the news. Another one is, at some point in your life, you may have had an experience that you consider traumatic. Now, that may not mean that it was traumatic in an objective sense, that it was a huge accident or a near-death experience. It could have just been that you were, at the age of 12, you were standing up in front of your class and you were sharing a speech, and someone yelled something really horrible to you, and in that moment stripped you of all of your confidence.
Yeah.
That becomes such an enduring memory for you as a child that it shapes you, and you may then develop a fear of public speaking and
Yeah.
a self-limiting belief that I'm not worthy of attention. And
Yeah.
then that can manifest in different ways. And there's lots of different things that could happen. You could, as an adult, you could be fired from a job and then not be able to find anything else. And then that could reinforce a belief you didn't even know you had about the fact
Exactly.
that, maybe I'm not employable. Maybe all the skills I thought I have, I don't really have. So at every stage of life, we need to be aware of this. And that's why I think this kind of, the topic of your podcast around the growth mindset and understanding of mindset is so fundamental,
Exactly.
regardless of whether you are struggling or even if you've got it all sorted out, you're still going to have your own battles.
Exactly. Don't you think self-awareness is basically the key?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't do any inner work unless you know why. And you need to have the drive around why
Mm-hmm.
in order to have the motivation to recognize the benefit of what you're doing. Otherwise, you won't have the determination to keep going.
Exactly.
Self-awareness is huge because we're actually not very good at it unless you
100%.
invest
There's a lot of effort. Yeah. You need to sit, you need
Yes.
to understand what exactly you're good at, what you're not good at, and then constantly evaluate yourself, saying where you're headed.
Exactly. And to your point, I think, the effort also comes from the vulnerability that you need to demonstrate when you're looking at the shadow work. So, we all have a shadow side, which is the dark side of our personality. When you're really delving deep into that space, sometimes it gets very, very uncomfortable because we like to stay in the light side. True. Where everything is great and we're focused on development, self-development, being better. True. But we have these things within us that we need to develop and work on.
Exactly.
And being aware of that, being okay with that, because we've all got it, but that's absolutely the first step. It's almost like the building block to be able to then step on top of that and then move forward.
100%. Now, in your opinion, Shade, what is gender equality and how is that important for businesses?
So to me, gender equality has been overcomplicated by a lot of thought leaders and a lot of discourse. We make it really, really complex. It's super simple. So gender equality simply means that gender becomes irrelevant. We're no longer looking at it from a gender lens. Everybody has access to the same rewards, resources, opportunities, and can do whatever they want with their lives without any limitations. So it's actually super, super simple. We know that in practice, though, it's not that simple, unfortunately. We're hoping one day it will be.
Yeah.
But the thing with gender equality is obviously it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to treat people fairly. But it's also really good for business. So we know there was a McKinsey study or a McKinsey report that came out in 2018, and they found that companies that have a higher level of gender equality, especially at positions of leadership and in positions of decision-making, they had stronger financial performance. And that's been reinforced by study after study. So we know that there is a massive benefit to business. So I still wonder why we are struggling so much, but it seems like organizations, when you talk to them, they recognize, yes, equality is important. Inclusion and diversity is important. Yep. But I feel like sometimes they talk about it as though it's a checkbox. Like, yes, we must do that, tick it off the list and move. It's much more than a checkbox. It needs to be something everybody buys into. And in fact, on the topic of equality, because of, again, how I was raised with these very strong spiritual beliefs, equality was very much a part of that. So I remember as a child being raised with this view, and I'll share a quote actually, because I think it's so beautiful. It's a quote I was raised on. It's this view that, I'll just share the quote. So the quote, it says, "The world of humanity is possessed of two wings, the male and the female. So long as these two wings are not equivalent in strength, the bird will not fly." So for me, this is such a beautiful analogy. And I was raised believing I was like a wing and my brother was like another wing, and we could do whatever we wanted to do. And we both needed to be empowered and strong to be able to do that.
Yep.
I believe when companies recognize that, equality and inclusion and diversity are not just tick boxes, they're actually the right thing to do and the right way to value our people. And they need to take more of an active role in removing barriers, because a lot of the barriers are unseen. So that's a whole nother topic. But,
I'm sure, because I know that if I ask you that question, it's going to be a whole different topic. We're going to need 10, 15 more episodes to just
we'll
cover
arrange
that up.
that for another time.
Exactly. Now, I want to talk about in the organizations right now. Obviously, you see the ratio of men versus women. Now, I would say most companies do have a good ratio where there's a balance. But when you go up the ladder, right, the percentage of women leading the organization it just reduces as you go up the ladder, right? So what can women do? What exactly do you think is the issue out there, the crisis out there, and why are women not able to do it? And what are your advices for women who can do something to make sure that they reach those positions?
A really, really great question. I would say, firstly, so I could comment on what organizations could do, but I'm going to focus just on what women can do. And I would say there's probably three key things. The first one is authenticity. The second one is backing yourself. And the third one is networks. So let me explain what I mean by these. So authenticity. In my Forbes article, I often share about how women have innate authentic strengths when it comes to leadership, when it comes to interacting with people. And these revolve around, empathy, people-oriented strengths, intercommunication, making people feel valued and inspiring others. And we know that these are key core leadership qualities, and women have them innately more than men. It's not to say men don't have them, but naturally more women actually embody these things. What a lot of women do, and I know this from the research and the women I coach, they feel like in order to fit into especially a male-dominated environment, they need to subdue these feminine qualities because they're afraid that they won't be taken seriously. I think that's hugely incorrect.
Yeah.
Because these are their authentic qualities. When they're demonstrating these authentic qualities, not only do they gain greater visibility, but they're actually able to make other people recognize the value that they're bringing, but also support other people. And by hiding away from your authentic strengths, you're stripping yourself of your ability to leverage your strengths. And we know when people are using their strengths, they feel so much more empowered and perform better. So I would say one of them is authenticity. Absolutely. Women need to be more authentic to their feminine strengths.
Yeah.
The second one, backing yourself. So again, we know from research that women cross-culturally are more likely to lack self-belief, lack self-confidence, and hold themselves back because of this viewpoint that I'm not ready, or I don't know it all yet, or I want to be perfect. So there's a commonly cited research study that if a woman sees a job advert and she has 60% of the requirements, she won't apply because she focuses on the 40% she doesn't have and tells herself, I'm not ready. A man, on the other hand, will see it. And even if he doesn't have all of them, he will just apply and back himself and say, look, I'll figure it out. Why not? This kind of honest self-confidence is something women can learn a lot from. So I'd say when it comes to backing yourself, you just need to embrace the fact that not everything is going to work out, because women hold back because they're afraid of failure. Failure is okay. It's learning, it's growth. Don't even view it as failure. Detach yourself from the outcome. So again, if something doesn't work out, it's not a reflection on you. Don't take that failure as a weight. Just acknowledge it didn't work out. I've learned a way that it didn't work. I'll try something different. And then lastly, take enlightened risks. Risks are really good so long as they tie into your overall vision in terms of where you want to go. And then the third part to this question, networks. So we know that women have far fewer networks within the organization or within, the world of business, and the networks that they have are less intentional than men. Now, we know that networks are essential for career advancement and development. So it's just about being proactive, seeing how you can add value to your networks in addition to just having a network. So it's hugely important to surround yourself with people who believe in you, and believe you, that's probably a good thing too, but who believe in you and can provide you guidance and advice. So I would say those three are absolutely key.
Guys, this brings us to the end of the part 1 of this interview. Stay tuned, the part 2 will be uploaded this Thursday, where we will dive more deeper into the conversation and discover what it takes to be truly successful. Until then, take care of yourself, your family, and the people around you. Peace.